So today I am going to reveal one of my biggest watercolor fears. You guys are going to think this is so silly. In fact, it's embarrassing to say out loud. But one of my biggest watercolor fears is actually painting in sketchbooks. I know. That sounds absolutely crazy coming from someone who paints all the time. But every time I get a new sketchbook, I end up saving it for the special paintings. And then I barely touch it because I'm so afraid of messing something up. When I paint on loose sheets of watercolor paper and I mess up or I don't like something, then I can always toss it and start all over. But in a sketchbook, I have this internal feeling of permanence, like everything I paint is supposed to be perfect and has to stay there forever. But recently I had this epiphany, like, why am I putting so much pressure on myself? I decided to treat my new sketchbook like I do my scrap pieces of paper, where I just experiment on, play with, enjoy the process of painting without that pressure of perfection. I ended up having so much fun with this. Some paintings turn out great and some definitely didn't. But for the first time, painting in a sketchbook felt freeing instead of intimidating. So I have here today a brand new sketchbook that we are going to just paint something easy and fun in. And I hope you'll join me so that together we can let go of that pressure to be perfect and simply just enjoy the painting process. Now, just really quick, this is the actual sketchbook that started this little journey for me. I've had others that I've used in the past, but this is kind of the one that got me out of that weird perfectionist funk. The sketchbook by the Arrtx company is really cute in size. It's got a beautiful design and a hardcover, and they do have a really cool feature for these. They make their covers so that they can lay flat at a 180 degrees. So when it's opened, it can really help when you're painting, especially if you're going to use the entire width of both of the pages, which we're actually going to be doing today. I decided just to paint some simple flowers that I was comfortable with doing to get me going, and then once as I got started, I really couldn't stop. It was so much fun. I did have a moment where I painted something that I didn't like, and then that fear started to build up in me again. But because Arrtx makes it so that you can easily tear the pages out, I literally just ripped out the page that I didn't like and moved on. That kind of helped get my mistake out of sight, out of mind for me. These are all just flower paintings, like I said, at the moment, but since then I have pulled this book out again and have painted even more and other things. Now, the Arrtx company is really good at making sketchbooks. They have quite a few in their selection. The majority of them used to be hot press. The little square one I just showed you was their only cold press sketchbook, and they recently just came out with more cold press sketchbooks of different sizes, which is super exciting. So I have two more of them here that are brand new. I haven't even painted in them yet, but I'm really excited to do that today. These ones are a little bit larger in size, but they still have that awesome fun hardcover design. And the cover does have the ability to lay flat at that 180 degrees as well. I should also mention that, just in case you're wondering, the paper in these sketchbooks are 100% cotton and 140 pound. They have excellent absorbency, so really good watercolor paper quality here. For the painting that I have planned for us to try out today, I'm going to use this larger sketchbook here, and I'm going to be painting across the entire 2 pages worth, so being able to lay this book flat is going to be helpful, but to be honest, I've never actually done this before, so hopefully it works out okay. I may just take a little clip here to also help hold the paper down to the cover, and then I think we're set to go. Now, even though my other paintings in this other sketchbook were all freehanded, I did decide to do a really simple outline drawing in this one. Nothing too complicated though. In fact, I think you could probably freehand paint this for yourself, or if you're more comfortable with an outline like me, then it's easy enough that you can draw this as well. I have here just a penciled in really simple bottle or vase shape, nothing too fancy. And then stemming out from the bottle, I have some really simple twig or branch marks, and that's literally it. That's all we need to get started. And it just kind of helps with our composition. So let me go ahead and just pull out a few other supplies that we need for this painting. I'll grab a few brushes, maybe a number 3 round, a number 6 round, and a number 1 rigger. We're keeping these things a little bit on the smaller side today. And then we of course need some watercolor paint. And I thought, since I did an Arrtx watercolor paint review just a little while ago, and these happen to be Arrtx sketchbooks, I thought, why not? I think I'm going to go ahead and pull out the Arrtx paints to go with these as well. I think that will be fun. I also have here a ceramic tray that I can do a little bit of color mixing on if I need to. And then of course we need some water and a paper towel. Okay, we're all set to get started. I think I'm going to start with the vase first, and I can just picture this being a really pretty blue color. So using a number 6 round brush, I'm going to pull out some phthalo blue and add a little bit of extra water in here so it's a little bit more on the lighter side. And I'm also going to pull out some ultramarine blue that's a little bit on the darker side. Then I'll just rinse my brush off a little bit, and using some water, I'm going to start painting in the entire vase area with just water first, so that this way our colors are going to flow and spread out really easily. Then after the space is all filled with water, I'll take some of the lighter phthalo blue color. I'll start painting that in here, and I'll start mostly around the edges of the vase with maybe a tiny bit of color in the center as well. This is just going to be the background color. We don't need a lot of it. Then while that is still wet, let's go ahead and take the darker ultramarine blue color and begin adding that in here in some of the shadow areas. So I might start with a little bit along the bottom of the vase and maybe down the sides. I'll probably make it a little bit heavier on the left side though than the right side. This way I can create sort of a highlight side and a shadow side. I'm not really working this paint too hard. I'm kind of just letting it do its thing, but because we're painting this wet on wet, it's going to blend and spread quite a bit on its own. I might also add a little bit more around this inner base ring of the vase so that it kind of gives the appearance of being see-through or glass-like, as well as a little bit around the top part of the vase. All right, that turned out pretty good. Not perfect by any means, but I think we can work with this. Now we're going to let this dry just a little bit, but then once as it has dried, we can come back in with maybe a smaller number 3 round and just add a tiny bit more ultramarine blue to make the base of the vase as well as the rim of the vase a little bit more defined. Okay, the next thing that we're going to want to do is maybe add in a shadow or a table that the vase can be sitting on. So I'm going to pull out some burnt umber and maybe some lamp black for this and keep it very neutral. Then using the number 6 round, I'll take some clean water and paint in an area under the vase for the paint to blend into. This can be however large or small you want it. Again, nothing too fancy. Then once as the area is wet, we can start dropping in some color. I'll start with the brown first, filling out pretty much the majority of the area, and then while that's still wet, I'll take some of the Payne's Gray and add in some darker accents, focusing it mostly off to the left side of the vase as well as right underneath the vase. If you find that you're enjoying my painting and teaching style today, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. All right, very good. I think that's good enough. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part, which is actually the most fun part in my opinion. Let's paint in the flowers. Because I'm going to be painting these in a little bit smaller size, I'm going to switch back over to the number 3 round and pull out a little bit of this rose color onto our tray. I'm going to make 2 sections of this color, one that is a little bit lighter and more watered down, and one that is more concentrated. Okay, now to paint in these flowers is really very simple. And the good news is that we get to be doing a lot of them. So you're going to get a lot of practice in getting these to work. Now, the most simple way to paint the cherry blossoms is to take some of the light watered down pink paint and then paint in 5 petal shapes going around in a circle. One of the keys to making these work though is that you're really going to want to keep them nice and wet because we are going to be adding in the darker pink right into the center. And we're going to want that to blend into the petals a little ways. You might have noticed that my darker paint didn't actually blend very well, which means I didn't have the initial petals wet enough. So I'm going to rinse and dry my brush off and just use the damp brush to help spread that color out just a little bit better this time. But no worries, we have a lot more of these that we can do, and I can do it better with the next try. Now, right now, I'm just going to show you how to paint in some larger open-facing flowers, but there are other ways that you can paint these in as well. We can paint them in more of a side-facing profile and just paint in 3 larger petals with maybe 1 or 2 smaller petals off to the sides, and then you'll add in that darker color into the center just like we've been doing. Another key to making these cherry blossoms work and look good is to try to keep them in bunches that are close together instead of having them too spread out and far apart from each other. We want to have some of them look like they're overlapping or underlapping in little clusters here and there. Now, besides the open facing and the side facing, we can do some more bud-like flowers on here as well, where we just paint in 2 or 3 petal strokes, and this creates the flower that looks like it's just about to open. I still like to add a little bit of that darker pink color right at the base of these, just to add a little bit of shadow though. And once as we start getting into some of the ends of the branches, you can also just paint in some really tiny little buds that are very small with just 1 petal shape, and then add a touch of that darker pink color at the base. Believe it or not, that's actually all there is to painting in these little easy cherry blossoms. So I'm just going to continue on painting in more and more until I get all of my branches filled. This can take a little bit of time to do them all, especially if you have a lot of branches coming out of your vase. But you could keep it fairly simple and just do 2 or 3 branches. But the good news is that at this point, we're just going to keep doing the same brush strokes and techniques over and over again until we get the look that we like. These are some of the easiest flowers that I know how to paint, and they also look really pretty. So I hope you give them a try. But for now, just sit back and relax and enjoy the painting process. Okay, very good. That was a lot of work, but look at how beautiful these are. I thoroughly enjoyed painting each and every one of these little flowers. It was just fun and relaxing to do. Many of them are not perfect, but that's okay because when we have so many bunched up in here together, you really don't notice any of the mistakes. All right, the last thing that we need to do is add in the branches to these blossoms to connect them all together. So I'm going to pull out some burnt umber and I'll mix it with a little bit of lamp black just to get a nice dark brown color. Then I'll switch over to the rigger brush and take a touch of paint and begin painting in some nice thin little twigs and branch lines. The good news about this part is that these lines do not have to be perfectly straight and lovely. In fact, the squiggles and imperfections, I think, makes them look even better. So if you're someone who has a more shaky hand, then you are going to like this part. I'll be painting the stems down pretty close to the rim of the bottle, but I am going to stop because I will be switching over to a larger brush later to kind of finish off the very base lines of the branches. After I have the main stem lines in here, I'm going to come back in and just add any smaller stems to connect some of those farther out flowers to the main branch. That way they don't look like they're just floating out there. Okay, very good. Let's switch over to the number 3 round and finish off the base parts of the branches now. These areas can be a little bit thicker in size. I'll pull any of these branches down clear to the top rim area of the bottle, but then I'll stop there because I'm going to skip that outer rim area of the bottle before I paint in the rest of the branches. That way it sort of helps give the illusion like they're inside the bottle. And believe it or not, I think that's actually it for the fun little practice sketchbook painting. To finish this off, I'm going to pull out a good eraser and just erase any of those little pencil lines that I still might be able to see. But actually, hold on. I thought I was done with this, so I signed my name and everything, and then I realized I forgot to add in the stamens into the centers of these flowers. So I'm going to pull out that rigger brush really quickly and finish that off. I'm just going to use some of that dark brown black paint and some nice thin lines and add those to the centers of any of the flowers that are open facing, or maybe some that are slightly side facing. Then I can come back in and add some dots on the top of the lines just to give it a cute and finished look. Well, we're wrapping up for today, but honestly, simple paintings like this are sometimes the most enjoyable. These sketchbooks have completely changed the way I approach painting in them and have made the process feel so much more relaxed and fun. In fact, I never thought I'd say this, but I actually look forward to painting in them more. If you're interested in trying out either the sketchbooks or the paints, you can find the links in the description down below. Okay, there we go. Now we can say it's finished. I'm glad that I remembered to do that before I finished recording this, but you know, this really was a lot of fun, and the more I've been painting in these Arrtx sketchbooks, the more I've been enjoying it. I'm still working on breaking that habit of just painting on scrap pieces of paper, but when I've been about to do that, I've been reminding myself I can do this in a sketchbook instead. I really love the sketchbooks. I plan to paint many, many more things with them. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.